Hi, everybody. Tanner, don't you start. Who we missing? Mike? Kelly? Where's Mike?
I think Kelly's on, Wes. There she
Mike,
is.
you're muted. Unmute yourself, Mike.
I'm getting there.
There you go. There you are, Kelly.
All righty. Good evening, y'all.
Evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
Bear with me. I will have a minor problem at the store, so I'm trying to handle about 3 different irons. But I do think we'll get started here in just a second. We'll step away just a minute. Okay. We want to go ahead and get started. So we'll call this meeting into session here at 6:06. Thank you all for being here. I will ask for Shannon to call the roll, if she would, please.
Shannon, you're muted.
You're muted.
Let's try it again. Thank
There we
you.
go.
Chairman Mike Barnett,
Present.
Dr. Bob Achek,
Here.
Kelly Collins,
Here.
Sandra Keller,
Present.
Kim Birchfield,
Here.
Mike Simmerly,
Present.
Wes Frazier,
Here.
all present. Thank you.
All righty, I appreciate that. Thank y'all for being with us. We had the minutes emailed back, I believe it was last week, correct, Shannon?
Correct.
And everything. So has everyone had a chance to look over them?
Motion to accept, Chairman Barnett.
All righty, second. All right, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, very good. Well, we got the minutes moving along. Let's go ahead then and allow Shannon to, hopefully most of you have a little bit of the agenda in front of you that I sort of had out there for Shannon to maybe go by and stuff of that nature. So if you would, I'll go ahead and let Shannon tell us about some of the stuff going on at the shelter.
I just want to let everyone know that Wendy, our employee here, her mother passed away in January. Miss Roberta Hughes was a big part of the shelter for many years. Her beautiful smile and her caring heart is definitely going to be missed by all that knew her. So if you could just keep that family in your prayers, please. Our current totals for the shelter are 27 dogs and 81 cats.
Wow.
Total January intakes was 40 cats, 32 dogs, and 1 rabbit. January totals adopted out was 72, including the rabbit. The shelter spayed last week 21 cats on our trip to ASPC of Asheville, and that was shelter animals. We had a few trips that was canceled for the Feral Cat Community Program due to some COVID-19 among the facility and staff members of the veterinary facility. So a few of our trips got canceled, but we do have them rescheduled starting on the 17th of February for our Feral Cat program. So we're picking that back up. As of now, we have 20 scheduled to go on that trip, and plenty trips scheduled after that. We are having an adoption event starting tomorrow, a Valentine's Day event. So anyone looking for a pet needs to come see us. We do have cats at PetSense every day through the week and on weekends. So that's a quick shelter update with some current numbers.
How many cats do you normally have down at down there for adoption at normal times?
We usually keep 3 to 5 down there. It's usually a total of around 3.
Okay, very good. I do not have, and I know I had on your agenda, Shannon, about the outside dog run enclosure and things of that nature. So I was not able to get in touch with some of the folks that I needed to today because we were working on so many other things concerning some repairs. Do you want me to discuss that just a little bit?
Sure.
That'd
be great.
We have right now 2 issues that are of concern at the shelter. One of them is a leak on the new outside dog enclosures and runs that were built back a few years ago, or not very long ago. We are currently working with Trademark and with Joey to get that remedied. I know Shannon has reached out a number of times and has attempted to, get them to come over. They have come over before. They have looked at it. I think they have attempted some repair on it, but it is still an ongoing issue at this time. The second thing is the pump issue that's associated with these runs that runs on out there and then attaches to our other line that is the existing line from the shelter proper. We're having a backup problem and things of that nature. Joey is working with a number of people to get that line tested. So hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have some updates on both of these. And hopefully we will have some resolution, because this has been going on, Shannon, since last summer, pretty much.
That's correct.
So, we'll continue to work on that. So, that's all that we can do right now, is try to get everybody involved and continue to push on those things. Shannon, do you have anything else concerning the shelter, or does any of the board members have any questions concerning things that we're doing right there at the shelter? If not, then I guess we will go into probably what will be the biggest part of the meeting as we go forward here. And I sort of tag that as sort of new business and continuing business as we look at things that are going on and everything. I guess the first thing on people's mind, well, it may not be the first thing on people's mind, but, one of the things that we wanted to discuss is the ongoing, process going with becoming a 501c3 and sort of where that is being led at this moment. And so I do know that we have some graphs and some other things that have been sent out concerning shelters and the neighboring communities and on down even into mid-state and over in the neighboring state. Most of you all, I think, have those graphs and see some of that as far as that goes, the comparisons and things of that nature. I'll sort of open it up. I have some comments on that I'd like to, maybe get some people to sort of help us research and look at. But board, what do you see in that? Shannon, what do you see? I think we also need to be very clear that, what was budgeted for the shelter in 2019 and 20 was not the actual numbers of what the shelter used. The shelter actually used around a little less than $240,000 was actually what the county had to put into the shelter, not the 440 number. So thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. So lock me in if you would. I know these guys want me to be safe. So, I think there's a little bit of confusion out there as to what, is allocated and what's actual, what's been used, what hasn't been used, how we're coming up with some numbers and things of that nature. And I will say, and I appreciate Michael and Travis Hill and some of you all being on there with us, that the shelter staff, and I think with the encouragement of the board, has done as much as they can to try to offset the dollars that are having to be poured into the shelter by, encouraging people as well as the Friends group to give to the shelter or give support and to look at ways that they can cut down on expenses. And I think they've done a really good job, and I commend Shannon and her staff for that. But that being said, let's go ahead and open that up just a little bit for some discussion there if we can.
Chair, I'll take a first pass, you don't mind.
That's fine. Go ahead, please.
I think we're all, some of us listened to financial management last Monday and saw some of the material that was presented. It's taken till today to get everything that we could actually look at. So I haven't had a whole lot of time this afternoon to be able to look at each of the shelter data that was presented at financial management. I would comment that several of them are incorrect, particularly as I look at Washington County, because I went back and looked at the budget documents, both from the city of Johnson City and the county documents. The amounts that are quoted here are not correct. I know that Johnson City adds $250,000 or did in 2019-20. They also provided $109,000 as a separate appropriation to bring down the debt service on the building, and Washington County put up $200,000. So I don't know where this $130,000 and $110,000 come from. So at least from that particular instance, and I guess there are others on here, I think it is incumbent on us to verify, because I don't think some of these are correct. Going back to Ronald Reagan's statement about the time we had with the Soviets, trust but verify, I think is something that we should take very much account of and do our own homework regarding this particular document and the things that were distributed. I'd also like to point out Mike Hill, who is on the call tonight, and he may want to speak up, he may not, that sent a email to Commissioner Holdren as Chair of Financial Management, indicating about the disparities, if you will, between counties and entities about who contributes what. Most of the high rollers in Buncombe County, Watauga County, North Carolina, et cetera, have summer homes there. They're not a part of the demographics that we see when you go and query what the average income is for the population. They also, which it needs to be mentioned, that those individuals who come there for the summer are very much involved in many of the issues, particularly the animal shelter issues, and hold fundraising events and contribute lots of dollars. So in that regard, we're not comparing apples to apples. So I just wanted to make sure, again, as we go through this data, that we do our own verification, reach out to counties, reach out to, as I did, Pete Peterson and Joe Grandy, looked at their budgets, and we need to do that in other counties as well, so we can get a good picture of what we're looking at. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rakeff. Okay, the floor is open for other.
I will be trying, this is Wes, I will be trying to get everything done from Sullivan County by Tuesday or Wednesday next week. I'm hoping to have everything there.
All righty, I do appreciate that. That will be very helpful. The more information we have, I think the better it is for us to be able to go forward. And I think that, I think what this whole board wants, and I think what the community, wants us to do is to do the right thing, whatever we can to ease burden on the taxpayers in whatever process that is, but also to give a very, very needed, service to the community. And I think that being said, I would really reach out to both governing boards, if I could, to help cut down some of the chitter chatter and backroom discussions going forward, that they would, make a resolution to their governing bodies that until this process sees fruition, however it goes, that they will, obligate to continue to support the shelter, to keep the shelter open for the services we provide the county, that I think most county residents do want, until we can find out how we can make this 501c3 work. And so I would reach out to the members that are here to make that known publicly. So the chitter chatter out there that we're closing the animal shelter, or a bunch of city councilmen or county commissioners are trying to eliminate animal shelter, which is not true. And I know you all will chime in and say that's not true, that you'd make that a part of your next meeting so that we can get that totally off the table of a lot of backroom discussions. What's your all's thought on that, please?
Michael, Mike Simmerly on behalf of City Council. I think Wes and Kim and myself, at least I can't speak for all council members, but I know the city fully supports the animal shelter. Always have, and I'm sure we always will. And it's just unfortunate what's been going on here lately. But we, again, our job for all of us is to save our tax revenue and spend it as most judiciously as we can and be responsible. But yet we still have to support the animal shelter and do all we can to just to make it work. And I thought I feel it's been working pretty good. I know, at least looking at the numbers, or at least the numbers that were provided to us, whether they're right or wrong, it looks like, we're right there in the middle of everything. When you look at cost, you look at animals that have been, that we've taken care of, been responsible for. And I think we're right, right. The numbers are probably about right where they should be, with the exception, obviously, of being animal control. And that's what we've got to work on and address here in the future.
Well said, Mike.
Okay. Anything else on that? Does any of the commissioners want to chime in on that?
I wanted to talk about the graph that we got on the financial support from the counties, where it's listed Sullivan, Carter, Green, Johnson, and so forth. I don't know if you all have that page where you can pull it up pretty quick. But it has Sullivan County's 100% supported financially. Also wanted to put in that Bristol City also puts in 219,000, and that's all in Sullivan County. Even though it's two separate, I couldn't find what Kingsport put in, so I'm sure they're putting in money also. And also in Knox County, it has 0% financial support, but when I pulled up their budget on page 60, it has 893,000 to the Young Williams Support Center, which is their animal control or animal center that they use on their website. And also they have 82,600 for animal control. And now that's just Knox County. I didn't get a chance to look up Knoxville City, their budget, which is of course separate. So, I was a little concerned because that looks, when you see how much their budget is total, which I think is about 5 million, it's a little, they do get support from their local county government. And also on the Asheville, not Asheville County, but the, I can't think of the name of the county that Asheville's in right off that I saw on the paper.
Buncombe County.
Buncombe County.
Yes. They put in $1,499,000, also towards animal control and animal services. That's on page 29 of their budget. So, this was a little bit misleading that that the local governments were not supporting these 501c3s, but they really are, and heavily supporting them also. So I just wanted to throw that in, that and I've got all the pages for all of those. Watauga County, what they give, and some of them are on, percentages are on the papers that we were given, but then some of them weren't. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in, that these counties are, a lot of these counties are that we were being compared to are heavily supported by their local county and city government also.
Kelly,
I
did Buncombe County, and all my information come directly from the shelter director over there. So anything she give me, I did reach out to, I can't remember if it's Buncombe County or City of Asheville. I think it's Buncombe, what their penny did bring in. And the gentleman, which is their CFO, told me their penny brought in $3 million a penny, but their property tax rate's only 53 cents per 100. But now Unicoi, I got Unicoi. I never could get a hold. I think his name was Mr. King. Everything I got off them come off their website or come through all the different financial people, which Mr. Bishop, Ms. Kessler, and Mr. Rosenoff. So I continue to send emails and continue to call Unicoi to try to get better numbers and to confirm what I've been told by the financial people. So I'm still working on that. And once I get those, I will send those out to everyone.
Oh, thank you, Travis. I appreciate that. I had pulled up their budget and it's about 500 pages. So it took me quite a while, but in human services, it has animal services, and that's where I got the 1,495,000 or 99,000. So, some of that may be their actual animal control, but also towards what they consider their animal shelter or whatever also that it goes for. So like I said, it was quite an eye opener, that the money that the counties are spending on a lot of these services, animal control and rabies clinics and that type of thing. Also, Sullivan County, part of that probably is animal control, and it's also rabies. But 541,000 is a pretty good chunk of money going to that. And then there's a couple more that I got, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you both. I think the more information we can share as we go forward, we realize this is a process, and it's going to continue to move as we go, because, naturally, as we try to make this thing occur, there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to do and going to have to know. Everything from, the way that their fundraising occurs, any kind of compensation for people that work into these fundraisers, how much, time is put into that kind of thing. And, is it feasible for our community, to do some of these things that maybe some of these larger communities are doing? The makeup of their board, how it's structured around the people that do this fundraising, city, county executives, things of that nature. Who owns the building? What kind of memorandum of understanding is there for, capital maintenance on these buildings when a HVAC or whatever goes down, or major plumbing issues, whatever it may be, insurance, attorney, compensation for the employees. There's a lot of things that are going to go into this, and it's going to be things that we're going to have to look at as we move farther along and things of that nature. And it's going to take all of us sort of trying to come together and figure out what's the best method that we go forward with. Anything else on that while we're on that type of discussion? Because we do have some other things that I think we need to be looking at concerning animal control, animal welfare. I know a lot of you's received a email concerning a dog catcher, and when we wrap this one little section up, we'll probably go straight into there. Anything else from anyone?
Just want to make everyone aware that the special called meeting is on February the 22nd at 6 p.m. by Zoom also.
Okay, that's very good. Yep, that's on a Monday, I do believe, is it not?
That's correct.
Okay, on a Monday. And so hopefully all of us can get on there and have a good discussion, a spirited discussion on things as we go forward, but yet make some headway.
Michael?
Yes.
Mike, similarly, just anyone that doesn't have an invite for that meeting Monday, just reach out. I think most of us have it. If anyone's missing it, just reach out to Daniel, myself, or any of us. I think most of the board has that. But again, it is Monday, the 22nd at 6 p.m.
All righty. Thank you for that. Okay.
Chairman Barnett, Mike Hill from District 2.
Hello, sir.
Good afternoon. I was able to find, and I submitted to my commissioner colleagues on your committee, the 990 forms from Watauga and Avery County, North Carolina shelter operations. And I've got to tell you that the information that was sent around today is not exactly congruent with what you will find in their 2019 tax forms. I would be happy to send that to any of you guys that want it, or you can probably reach out to Dr. Acuff or Ms. Collins or Ms. Culler. I did share that with them. Also, I reached out to the chairman of economic development for Avery County. They are demographically very similar to Carter County until you factor in the summer residents. They should be a tier one. He shared with me they should be a tier one county, tier one economic distressed county for grant purposes. However, they come in at tier two because of all the ad valorem revenue that comes in off of the estate homes in the 13, 15 gated communities over there. They have 246 $1.5 million plus residences on the books in Avery County. And in comparison to Carter, where we have like somewhere in the neighborhood of 20. So the demographic information is not exactly comparable. It isn't housed with their register of deeds or with the economic development folks. It would require some digging to find the actual stats, but there's enough information there to presuppose that there's a big gap in the potential for support of an animal shelter in Carter County versus these two counties across the state line that were part of the subject, the subject in the comparative study. Thanks for the time.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for that information. And hopefully we can again look at that as we have our workshop. And I would encourage all of you all to be there as we try to see how we need to go forward. Anyone else?
Mr. Barnett, that's not a workshop. That's an actual voting meeting that will happen on the 22nd.
Okay, I stand corrected. I guess I didn't really notice that. I had a lot of different emails coming in and I probably just misstated. So we'll scratch that.
There had been a workshop planned and then some things were changed. So just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah, I know we had to postpone that with a little bit of some of the stuff going on around us was not conducive, I don't think, to having a good meeting. And I think Mr. Hill would probably second that. Okay, are we done here with that? Let's talk about the dog catcher proposal that Shannon has worked up. You know, I realize that per state law, you know, the police department is going out, you know, on some of these aggressive or difficult situations within the community. Problem is we don't have any way of getting said animals or whatever transported to the shelter. And, you know, this is at least a starting point. I would hope that we'll be able to get the truck from the back of the courthouse and actually get it where it can be utilized to at least alleviate a little bit of some of the complaints that we're getting from the community or other people around that are witnessing some of this stuff. So I'll let Shannon go ahead and go over that just a little bit, if she would.
Thank you, sir. Chief Jason Shaw is on Zoom with us tonight, and he had reached out to me last week, and we had a great discussion. So I'm going to let him go ahead and take the floor at this time and just explain a few things and a few issues that he's having. And then we can go into the proposal part of the dog catcher position. Chief Shaw?
There he is. Hello there, Mr. Shaw.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Yes, well, my picture's not coming in well, but I think that's okay. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Can you turn up your volume at all? Remember, I'm old and hard of hearing.
am too. Is that any better?
I can hear you some better.
Okay. Let me try. Okay, so right now, without anybody able to come out and pick up an animal by the officer's request, it really puts us in a bind, so to speak, to say it calmly. 'Cause there's just sometimes that we have to we have to take possession of an animal, or we take possession of an animal and need some way to get it to the shelter. Right now, we don't have that. And, again, that's aggravating, say, the police, and it puts officers in a bind when they're there to solve a problem, and if the problem is putting the animal in the shelter, then it becomes more of a problem when there's no way to get it back. That's what we're up against now, without any way of transporting and without the after hours access.
Thank you, Chief Shaw. As we have spoken with 911, 911 is addressing the calls that someone can bring to the shelter during the opening hours of the shelter. Whenever any staff members here, we're taking the animals from the community in. But as Chief Shaw said, after hours, they're having a issue with the officers trying to decide what to do with the animals. So as we all know, there's a huge need in Carter County for animal control. There's a huge need in Carter County for someone to go out when the deputies are on scene and there's an issue with a cat or a dog that needs to be removed from a property or out of the roadway, or that's been hit by a car, injured in some way, aggressive animals that needs to be taken care of and removed and taken to the shelter. So as we had discussed in November, and we didn't find a solution in November, as the calls came in and I had talking with several different people, I came up with a dog catcher position. And this is a proposal starting for 1 March through 30 June of 2021. And this position would be $12 per hour for 40 hours per week. And that is with benefits. So the benefit total for 18 weeks is how I figured it, is $12,587.58. I have no way of knowing how much the dog catcher position will be called out on overtime. I have no idea how many times it's going to be called out on the weekend. My proposed hours would be 9 to 5. And I say 9 to 5 for the reason, if someone has left a message, that gives my office manager time to come in, check the messages, and prioritize the calls by the emergency needs for the dog catcher to resume the day. So the overtime pay, I figured in 8 hours per weekend, Saturday and Sunday, that would be on call. Emergency situations only at $18 an hour. And that's going to be for 18 weeks, $2,592. The maintenance and truck tires, I did have someone to look at the truck tires. We think that they're okay for this budget cycle that we're in. We will need tires on the next fiscal cycle. The cell phone service, I did get a quote from the finance department. She did reach out to the Verizon rep. Currently, we have no cell phones listed for the shelter. We have no need for them unless this proposal is passed. I figured in the gas per week, I figured in Just some identification for the dog catcher that goes out. And just some intake and call tags. Any animal that comes in that will be picked up will have an intake form completed by the dog catcher. And if a known owner is not available at the home, or we think we know who the owner is, or maybe the person who calls says, I know the owner, we can leave a call tag on their door stating that we think your animal may be at the shelter and you need to call the shelter. For a total of 4 months, $16,604.58. I would recommend rounding that up to $17,000. I would recommend that the money from the sheriff's department be moved over to an animal dog catcher position in the animal shelter budget. I think Brad Burke already has some line items in place just in case they're used. This position is not an animal control position. There will be no authority will be given to the dog catcher, nor will this person be a sworn officer or carry a weapon. This position will only be called out. All the calls will still go through 911, and the calls will come to the dog catcher from Carter County Sheriff's Department or Elizabethton Police Department. The skills required: ability to work with animals, both friendly and non-friendly, ability to identify conditions that need immediate medical services. So does anyone, let's go over some of the essential duties, just so everybody is on the same page and aware of this proposal. If you have any questions, you have any comments, you have any suggestions, please speak up and say so. We're open to improving this position. So capture and remove stray animals, unwanted animals, sick or injured animals from undesirable conditions, situations per call out from Carter County Sheriff's Department or Elizabethton Police Department. Any animal that has been severely injured or sick is to seek medical attention. Place an animal in a safe and secure kennel for transportation to the Elizabethton Carter County Animal Shelter. Place an animal in a kennel with food, water, proper bedding, depending upon season and weather. Once the animal has been securely placed, the dog catcher is required to fill out a detailed intake form of incident and location to be retained at the Elizabethton Carter County Animal Shelter. The shelter will attempt to contact any owners of the animal with any kind of identification tag or microchip. So that's kind of an idea of the dog catcher position that I have put much thought into to be proposed. I'd love some feedback to see what you guys think, if something needs to be added or something needs to be changed.
Thank you, Shannon. Okay, board and guest, jump in here.
Shannon, I think you did a great job. I really like the way you laid it out. You kept it simple, didn't overthink it. And there's things on here none of us know, like the maintenance on the truck. You know, it's all just a guesstimate, but a good job. I like the way you laid it out.
Thank you, sir.
I agree. Good job.
Thank you.
Chairman Barnett, if I may, I talked with Matt Bailey this week from 911, and their biggest concern is what to do when it's not an aggressive animal that the sheriff department's not interested in helping with. I talked with Dexter. He said, you know, they will continue to take care of any aggressive animals or any problem that's against state law. But 911 does have an issue who to call in other situations. So I think this is something we need. And Shannon and I agree, it's an excellent proposal.
Thank you.
Shannon, I would like to see something added that if the dog catcher sees this dog has been abused or whatever, then they will contact the sheriff's department. Did I miss that when I was reading it?
No, it's not on here, Kelly. I can add that. I'll be happy to add that. Anytime that there is neglect or cruelty case, the sheriff's department is always the one to investigate And that's where that we get our district attorneys involved. And that's where the district attorney actually takes it to court. We assist with any time that there is a neglect or cruelty. Our number one priority is the safety of the animal and getting that animal and examined by a veterinarian to see exactly what the extent of the cruelty or the abuse or neglect is. But I'll be happy to add that on here.
I think something needs to be added so that it, it's part of those duties, because it really it's not going to be that once an animal is, you've got a cruelty case or they've been injured, it really is not going to be this person's duty after that. They're going to have to turn it over to the correct person.
That's correct. Anytime that there is one of those cases with a cruelty neglect, the shelter becomes a holding facility and it's not available to be adopted out. We're a holding facility to continue to seek medical care until the judge rules on either it goes back to the original owner or the judge rules that it becomes Carter County Animal Shelter property. At that point, depending upon the medical condition, it will go up for adoption.
Chair Bob Acuff, First District. I agree, Shannon, you've done a great job. This is a great fallback position. And I just want folks to recognize, and I see Attorney Hardin's on the line with us, and he may want to expound on it. If he does, that's great. That this item as an animal control officer never went to the Carter County Budget Committee because of the fact that we had to give some authority to those individuals if they were going to be called animal control officers and come to the shelter. We couldn't call them that because they were not backed up by the jurisdiction of the law. So I think this is a great fallback position. When the sheriff came before the law enforcement committee last week, and we talked to him about working together, and I guess Chief Shaw would also be appreciative of having somebody to work with their officers with a dog catcher title that could maybe transport that animal back to the shelter. But I want to make sure folks understand we're here as a fallback position because we couldn't move the animal care or control officers from the sheriff's office and call them animal control officers because they had no jurisdiction under the law. That's what those resolutions, which Attorney Hardin drew up for us, which was all codified in Tennessee law, would have given them the authority to do. So you've done a great job. I really appreciate it, and I think it's a great fallback position.
Thank you.
Just for the information, when I was talking with Sheriff Lunsford, he was going to be in Nashville tonight, so that's why he said he couldn't be on here.
Thank you for the update. Any other discussion?
I was just going to say, Chairman Barnett, that I think in November we had passed through Budget Committee to move the money from the Sheriff's Department and the vehicle through, and that did get passed. I will be glad. I know this is a little bit different amounts, a little bit less than what I believe is in their account. I'll be happy to accept a motion from the floor to address this next Tuesday if somebody wants to give it.
I appreciate that. Hopefully we can make this occur. I think this is a step in the right direction. Everybody fine with that?
Well, no, actually, I'm not. If this goes forward and the animal shelter does change over to a 501c3, then I think we've got another problem with animal control. We're going to have to be, I think, a little more specific on some things. And I just don't want to see us get set up to be sued or anything because, if it were to be voted in are these employees still going to be county employees? Are they going to be still covered? There's a lot of questions about that before we actually go forward hiring somebody that may not even be a county employee. So I,
If Attorney Harden's still on here, I think he can answer that question. He answered the other night during the meeting that, if they're a 501c3, they're no longer county employees.
Yeah, I'm on here. That was the understanding I have, and that like I said, I don't claim to be an expert in corporate law, but I would think that if it's a separate corporate entity that is not the county government or the city government, that the employees would be employed by that entity, whatever it may be, a separate corporation, just like any other corporation. Apparently, maybe other counties are their county employees that work at these 501c3 corporations. If that's possible, great. I just can't tell you that I know that for sure. So there was some mention of other counties that had gotten some sort of specifically qualified folks that are more have more expertise in those areas. And if that's what it takes to answer your question, then by all means do so. It just as a common sense, from a common sense perspective, it seems strange that a separate corporate entity would have employees working for it employed by someone else.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. All right, so where do we go? We have a need.
Chairman Barnett, I was about to ask the question if some of the other commissioners could remember. I think the sheriff's budget had about 28,000 still in there for animal control. Do any of you remember that?
Ms. Clara, I think in November had about 29,000 and some change.
Thanks, Travis.
There has been some weeks that we have had animal control, that there's been some of the animal control officers that was able to work, maybe not the full week, but a half a week, or a couple of days. So I think that amount has been used some, but there still should be an ample amount in there. You may want to talk about putting the money that's been allotted, the remaining money, maybe put it in a reserve account to be spent for animal control on the following budget cycle. That's not up to me. It's just a suggestion you may want to think about. But the proposal was I would round it up to the 17,000.
Shannon, have you talked with Mr. Burke? Do you have 17,000 in your budget to be used for this?
Oh, I do not. I'm sorry, I do not have the money in my budget at this time.
That's fine. That's why I guess I was interested in moving the money over from the sheriff's department. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the wish of the board, and we're all in agreement. I would make the motion that we forward this to budget, making sure that the dollars for the animal control officers follow the dog catcher position. And we ask budget to provide those extra funds, whether it be through the animal care officer positions at the sheriff's department, or however we come up with the dollars to provide that position as soon by March the 1st, hopefully.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Dr. Acuff, just as a reminder, Budget Committee met last night. They will not meet again before the March Commission meeting.
Okay, sorry I missed that. I had other things on my calendar. So thanks for
Dr. Acuff, I don't care at all to reach out to Mr. Burke and have him get a number and present it Tuesday night if you would like. That's what I was offering earlier, is if you want to do that.
That'd be great, Chairman Hill. Appreciate that.
So I guess if you don't mind, Shannon, we'll go ahead and call for the vote that's on the floor to get the funding from, the sheriff's department over, with the understanding that, naturally, whatever happens on the 22nd, it doesn't materialize with, $4 or $5 million in our account somewhere for a nonprofit overnight. So there'll have to be a lot of working and negotiations and things going forward. if we're able to make that happen. And I do appreciate Kelly bringing that up. Yeah, it does cloud the issue on down the road. But I think right now the big issue is trying to get some type of movement, animals to be transported to the shelter. So go ahead and call that vote.
One more comment before that I call the roll, please, sir. The special called meeting is on the 22nd. There is 28 days in February. So having someone hired by March 1st could be a little bit of an issue. I did state March 1st on this, but depending upon what happens on the 22nd of the special call meeting, it could defer things just a little bit, or it may change the play of the dog catcher position. But I'm happy for Travis to present it as the motion was made. I just wanted to make everyone aware that the meeting on the 22nd is a little bit of a close time for March 1st to start.
Exactly.
Chairman Mike Barnett,
Yes.
Dr. Bob Acuff,
Yes.
Kelly Collins,
Yes.
Sonja Culler,
Yes.
Kim Birchfield,
Yes.
Mike Simmerly,
Yes.
Wes Frazier.
I think Wes had to step out. He had another thing going on. And so, we'll have to go forward without Wes, I think, from this point on. Okay, thank you. So that passes. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Would we not need to vote on the animal control, or not animal control, dog catcher job description, and have that on record also?
I think
I
that
think so.
would be a bad idea. What do you think, board?
Yes.
Body, I'll entertain a motion. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the position for the dog catcher and all the provisions that have been written up by their shelter.
I'll second.
Call the roll on that if you would also, Shannon.
Chairman Mike Barnett,
Yes.
Dr. Bob Acuff,
Yes.
Kelly Collins,
Yes.
Sonja Culler,
Yes.
Kim Birchfield,
Yes.
Mike Simmerly,
Yes.
and Wes Frazier. Thank you.
Body, thank you.
Chairman Barnett, if I may, I have a couple of things I'd like to ask. One, Attorney Harden, if you wouldn't mind, it seems to be, keeps coming up, but if you wouldn't mind to once again explain about our resolutions and how they pertain to state law or don't pertain to state law, I'd appreciate it. The ones that did not pass.
Okay, I'll try. As you all know, over the last couple of years or so, I've been trying to help you all work with developing these animal control regulations. Most of them are pretty much verbatim copies of the wording of state law, but the regulations themselves would allow enforcement by non-law enforcement officers to simply write citations for civil infractions that they could be fined for. So they're not anything that's required to have by the county or the city. The city already has their ordinances, and the county officers and city officers enforce existing state law as criminal offenses. So the intent, I think, of the board here is to have separate enforcement capability aside from law enforcement that would have little teeth to get compliance on some of these issues. So even without those in place, you all can certainly have a dog catcher position, and that person's authority would just be to pick up stray animals and respond to calls that people are asking for voluntarily. They couldn't go on anybody's property or investigate or prosecute crimes. They would still have to involve law enforcement for that.
Thank you. Next item is, I know Chairman Hill is on here. I think I saw Ms. Holdren. Do you have any idea how long Sullivan County's been going through the process of the 501c3?
Miss Culler, I do not. I'd have to defer that to Miss Holdren.
Ms. Holdren, are you there? She may have stepped away. Oh, there she is. Are you with us?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I wasn't planning on speaking. I am looking over the records that I have with Sullivan County, and I don't have an exact year written down, but I know that they're very early in the process, and that was the reason that the director of the board gave me for still having 100% government support. So I don't know if they're in year 1, 2, 3, but it's still early for them. And I can get an exact year, but I don't have it right now.
Thank you.
While I've got you, Ms. Holdren and Mr. Hill and Mike Hill on here, in listening to discussions that have went on for quite a while on the animal welfare laws or regulation or resolutions or whatever you want to call them, why do you feel there's so much pushback on that if it's based on state law?
I received an email from Director Posada that she had requested from Attorney Hardin, asking him to highlight exactly which parts of those regulations were state law and which were not. I'm guessing, but I would say there was about 50% highlighted in yellow and 50% that was not. So I take that to mean that only about 50% of those regulations were state law only. And I am separating regulation from resolution. The resolution may have been 100% state law, but it was my understanding that the night in November, we were voting on both the resolution and the regulations. And the regulations is what prevented it from passing based on the talk that I've heard.
Thank you.
Some of the discussion I've heard is, I think with the amount of citations, the fact that if a citation is issued, that a court cost or a court date is set, which incurs court cost. And that seemed to be a big sticking point as well as some of the chatter I've heard.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion that's been had, and I was trying to find the right place to jump in. And actually, as things have continued, you hit on some more things that I was thinking about. Ms. Culler's question to Mr. Hardin, and then the other about the regulations. If I understand the proposal as it's drafted, the person in and of itself, this person does not have authority to really, I mean, I guess if there was a stray animal in the middle of the street and no readily available way to know to whom the dog belonged, well, you pick up a stray dog in the middle of the street. And I guess if the owner wants to complain after the fact, when the animal's out in the shelter, that, you can take it up with them then, I guess. But other than that, again, and Shannon, I guess I'm kind of directing this at you to help me make sure I'm getting it straight and clarify, is this. Really, any other action they're going to be taking would be under the authority or direction of a sworn law enforcement officer, whether that's Elizabeth Police Department or Carter County Sheriff's Office. So if I understood, and I know Dr. Acuff's on here, and he was on that, I think he's on that committee. I heard the sheriff speak at the law enforcement committee meeting, which was, again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, he's not here, but I think he said that they would be responding through the calls, and if they felt like it wasn't a matter for the sheriff's office and was just merely animal control, I'm going to use that phrase, that if this type of position we're talking about might fit that well. But yet that also means you'd have an officer there, and if an officer is there to enforce state law, or if you're in the city to enforce state law or city ordinance, then under the authority of that sworn officer, they could seize that animal and turn it over to the shelter personnel, our quote unquote dog catcher, to facilitate getting that dog to the shelter and taken care of, or whatever else needs to happen. Is that about right, Shannon?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, and again, I'm looking at it from City PD's perspective. I think that might facilitate the work for law enforcement, because I know the chief was trying to speak to it and his audio wasn't working very well. So to me, that's an improvement, because if this person's able to make the scene and facilitate taking the dog off the law officer's hands, and then law enforcement can either, whatever needs to be done, if there's a violation of law or ordinance, they can see to that with the offender if they're available, and take care of it. But then they can clear that call and get back to other calls. So there's always the next call coming in, and while that animal's being taken care of and transported back, that frees us up and helps us along the way. But again, I'm looking at it from context. I know the proposal at the beginning was larger than this, and this was a thinner proposal. And I think that needs to be said out loud. That I think it will help. Again, that's my perspective on the front end. But will it cure everything? I can't answer that question. I can't say that. There's less here, and there's less to pay for. So those run together. But I think that's an expectation that needs to be said out loud. From what I'm hearing from you, Ms. Posada, is that's a person gets you a person, and we need to recognize and acknowledge that up front. That's the level of additional service that you're undertaking to offer.
That's correct. I will
Okay.
agree that the city and the county, the community's need for the animal shelter and animal control or dog catcher will not change. And so we're just trying to fill the need of our community, help our law enforcement to make things quicker, to move on to other calls, as you stated. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it. Again, I want to make sure I understood it correctly, and thank you for that.
City Manager, you're absolutely right. At the law enforcement meeting, I know I asked, I'm sure there were several others that asked of the sheriff, would he be interested in, as he said, this is a new day and a new way of doing things, sitting down and talking with us at the shelter for a dog catcher position to help the sheriff's office. And I would imagine that Chief Shaw would take advantage of the same opportunity, as well as someone to come alongside and help the officers in the city.
All right. Thank you all for that, and thank you for the information, commissioners. We have any other discussion on that?
I may be a little confused also on a couple of things, so I want to ask. We were talking about, and I think I'm using the wrong terminology, but if our dog catcher went out, and just using this example, to the same house 3 or 4 times for a dog running at large, maybe, and I think originally the plan was that we gave that person a, maybe I'm not saying it right, citation or a
Penalty.
penalty, thank you, penalty. And if they came to the shelter and paid the penalty, then no citation was given, so it would never make it to the court system. And when I talked to the Washington County animal control officers, they told me that very few go to the actual court system because everybody pays, they don't want to pay court costs when they pay a $25 penalty, or I think they called it something different, but so that was my impression or my understanding of how you know, we were going to do that, so it didn't bog down the court system. And that's when I talked with Washington County, I talked with two different people, and they both said that, you know, very few actually make it to court, and usually it's bigger cases or bigger problems than smaller penalties, so to speak. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I misunderstood that, but that's kind of, you know, what I understood when we were first talking about this. So that didn't have to go to the court system and cost them more money with their department.
Kelly, I think you're exactly right. That was some of our discussion during our workshop, that it wasn't that we were trying to send everybody to court. It was just that we were trying to get their attention and keep them from going to court if they just pay the animal shelter penalty.
Yeah. And Kelly, I think you're absolutely right as well. I like to explain it, how the planning commission or the planning department operates. They don't issue citations. They send a letter and say, we've got a problem. Can we help you solve that problem? And my anticipation would be that this is how this would work. The courts would never be involved unless it was egregious to the point that it is an individual who is a multiple offender, that they never help us solve the problem. Then we go to court. I mean, that's exactly what planning does. So there would never be a involvement of the court until a later date.
Okay, thank you. Others? Well, I guess we can revisit that as we go a little bit farther and see if we can, you know, make some improvements on the document for some of the commissioners, or do a better job of explaining what we're trying to accomplish and the burdens that we don't foresee happening going forward. Regardless, we know that we've got to take a step somewhere, and it's just like being an infant and this 501c3 and everything else. We have to take steps, and they may be small steps as we begin. Much as Ms. Holden talked about Sullivan County, you know, they're still in their infancy, if you would, as they try to find their way through all this with what they're needing to accomplish. That'll be the same thing that we will probably entertain. I will ask maybe for Daniel to help clarify that there has been some confusion on how the breakdown between city and county, the budget process goes for support of the animal shelter in the past, and very possibly for at least a short time going forward, and how the city residents versus the county residents, the size, the proportions, the percentages, and things of that nature. So I will allow, if the board will, you know, be a little patient for Daniel to go ahead and give us a little update on that, because I think there was some confusion in the past that this is a 50-50 type of a split on some of that, which it's not. Daniel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Abby, if you could, I'd like to share a document to kind of walk through some of the numbers I have, and while Abby's working on that, I'll be happy to provide this to, thank you, Abby. Got it. I'll be happy to provide it to the members in email or in written form, whatever works. Let's see here if I can share. See if we can see that. Okay. I'll try to make it a little bigger if it'll let me. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. Again, and if the members wish and you want to take it back to your respective body, city and county, for informational purposes, you can. That's really why I undertook this, was to try to lay out for the community, you know, for the citizens that we provide the service for, what's that cost profile look like? Because we all, you know, we're all in this one together to provide the service for the community, and I think it's valuable to look at it. And actually, what sparked the thought was in prior county meetings, I think Finance Director Burke had provided some information on breakdowns for cost per animal. Why that matters here is, as you can see on the share, what I have here is just for operational purposes, not including capital, but just the operations. We took those numbers that Director Burke had drafted, but again, looked at them at a little different perspective. So we'll get there. So if you look, really the most recent column is, as you can see my mouse moving here, fiscal 1920, which just closed. This was the total amount of actual expense that shows on the books. But you need to take capital out of that because, you know, we're talking about operations right now. So just the operating account. And if you go from there, the next set of lines in here, this is basically revenue that comes in that's generated by the shelter. Again, that's money that neither the city nor the county taxpayer has to bear. You're going to call them the users or the customers of the shelter. If you're adopting a dog, you might be a customer. Others may be less willing if they had fines or registrations and things that they had to pay. So we take that off. So that was almost $57,000 last fiscal year. So really that leaves $353,000 and a half, $353,500. That's what has to be funded through local government revenue. Of course, the city is now at $125,000. That's up from the fiscal year previous of 19, that was $100,000. So, and what ends up happening is you take this number here, and of course you're deducting from it the $125,000 that the city provides here, which nets out to really what ends up being the county's share that is again taxpayer supported. So then I've gotten a bold box here. Well, back up. Like, y'all follow along so far? Am I going off the rails? I'm not muted. Okay. Well, I'm getting a smile. That means I'm being heard. So that's good. So if you look at it, really, government to government, again, and I don't think that that's exactly the right perspective. But even if we take that one, it was 65% county, 35% city. All those proportions. Again, that's the 125 then you end up with 228,000 and a half for county government. But again, I think the better way to look at it, because oops, I messed up my screen. We try that again. Is to think about, again, we're providing the service as to the whole community, and I know some on the shelter board have said this before, but I think it's useful to think of the fact that city residents are county residents, and when the county government as an entity is paying, all 100% of us in Carter County are paying toward that. But then on top of that, since the city is in the county, when the city government pays, that's about 25% of the people pay an additional proportion. So when you look at that, we'll scroll from here. Really, the 2019 estimate numbers is 13,509 for the city, and then the county total is 56,391. So the city is about 24% of the total county population. So that's 100% pay the county's proportion, and then 24% of those people, again, in the county, which are city people, pay the additional 35%, if that makes sense. So here's a way to look at that in numbers is, if you look at my nice little chart I have here, my man in green, since we're talking about money on the left, if you count it per person, every county resident would be contributing $4.05 toward the shelter operations. So that's what you see on the left. But then also on top of that, as you'll see, here's a citizen in the city. We'll pay the same $4.05, which is the county's contribution at the end for fiscal 20. But then on top of that, there's for the city's contribution, since there are fewer people, the city residents pay an additional $9.25 for a total of $13.31. So again, I say that to try to draw out the fact that I know it's easy to default to the answer of there are two governmental entities involved here and we're trying to make this partnership work, but we're serving the same community and the folks in the city, we're in the county. I know we say that, I know it's easy to think about that, but this is a way of looking at it as far as the actual tax dollars that have to be paid to cover the operating cost. That's how it's being borne by the residents that are there. I don't want to belabor the point, but if anybody had any questions or comment on it, I'll be happy to reply.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that sort of helps break it down in a way that I think we can understand and we can see, and I appreciate your work on that. Anyone have any comments on that?
Thank you, Daniel.
All righty. Do we have any other topics for the board or even our visitors to discuss here? The regular meeting date for the next animal shelter board would be on what, the 9th?
That's correct.
That I may ask for some help if I want my marriage to continue. That is my birthday, and I think my wife had something planned for me. So I may have to ask Dr. Acuff or someone on the board to maybe chair that meeting, or either come and bail me out after she asks me like that.
I'm pleased to chair it, Mike.
Okay, I do appreciate that. Thank you all for being here. I thank all the commissioners, especially the board, Josh, Daniel, Jason, a number of you for being there, other guests that are on there. I appreciate y'all trying to help us keep a very needed service in the community, but to do it in a way that hopefully we can continue on for many years to come. I'll entertain a motion if no one else has anything.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
All righty. Well, thank you all. I hope you all have a good rest of the week. And if you need me for anything, you know where I'm hiding out at. Just come and find me or yell at me or whatever. And I thank you all very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.